Jaya Nitya Lila Pravishna Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Shotashat Shishimad Abhaya Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jaya Nitya Lila Pravishna Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Shotashat Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sheko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Karada Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Kiri Govardhana Ki Vrindavan Dhama Ki Navadvip Dhama Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, verse 27. Read line by line. Tameva mrityam amrityam tattadaivam Savatamanopi jagat parainam Yashma balim vishvasrijoharanti Gavayatta vainashitamayantrita Dhamevamritam amritam dattadaivam Savatomanopi jagat parainam Yashmai balim vishvasrijoharanti Gavayatta vainashitamayantrita Dhamevamritamamritam tattadaivam Savatomanopi jagat parainam Yashmai balim vishvasrijoharanti Gavayatta vainashitamayantrita Prabhus. Dhamevamrityam amritam tattadaivam jagat parainam Asmai balim vishvasrijoharanti Gavoyata vainashitamayantrita Dhamevamritam amritam tattadaivam Sarvatmanopi Atmanopi Jagat Parayanam Ashmai Balin Vishvashrijo Haranti Gavo Yata Vainasi Dama Yantriktika Tamevam Amritam Tata Daivam Savatsmanopi Jagat Parayanam Yasmai Balim Vishvashrijo Haranti Avo Yata Vainasi Damayadrita. Mataji's. Tavamitam Amritam Tafadaivam Savatsmanopi Jagat Parayanam Yasmai Balim Vishvashrijo Haranti Avo Yata Vainasi Damayadrita Amritam Tata Devam Savatsmanopi Jagat Parayanam Yasmai Balim Vishvashrijo Haranti Avo Yata Vainasi Damayadrita Amritam Tata Devam Savatsmanopi Jagat Parayanam Word by word. Tam, unto him. Eva, certainly. Mrityam, death. Amritam, immortality. Tata, my dear son. Devam, the supreme. Sava Atmana, in all respects. Upehi, surrender. Jagat, of the world. Parayanam, ultimate goal. Yashmai, unto whom. Balim, offerings. Vishvashraja, all the demigods like Brahma. Haranti, bear. Gava, bulls. Yata, as. Vai, without fail. Nasi, in the house. In the nose, sorry. Dhamma, by a rope. Vantrita, controlled. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. My dear boy Dhruva, please surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate goal of the progress of the world. Everyone, including the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, is working under his control, just as a bull, prompted by a rope in its nose, is controlled by its owner. Purport. The material disease is to declare independence from the Supreme Controller. Factually, our material existence begins when we forget the Supreme Controller and wish to lord it over material nature. Everyone in the material world is trying his best to become the Supreme Controller, individually, nationally, socially, and in many other ways. Dhruva Maharaj was advised to stop fighting by his grandfather, who was concerned that Dhruva was adhering to a personal ambition to fight to annihilate the whole race of Yakshas. In this verse, therefore, Svayambhuva seeks to eradicate the last tinge of false ambition in Dhruva by explaining the position of the Supreme Controller. The words Mrityam Amritam, death and immortality, are significant. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, I am ultimate death, who takes away everything from the demons. The demons' business is to continually struggle for existence as lords over material nature. The demons repeatedly meet death after death and create a network of involvement in the material world. The Lord is death for the demons, but for devotees he is Amrita, eternal life. Devotees who render continuous service to the Lord have already attained immortality. For whatever they are doing in this life, they will simply continue to do in the next. They will simply change their material bodies for spiritual bodies. Unlike the demons, they no longer have to change material bodies. The Lord, therefore, is simultaneously death and immortality. He is death for the demons and immortality for the devotees. He is the ultimate goal of everyone because he is the cause of all causes. Dhruva Maharaj was advised to surrender unto him in all respects, without keeping any personal ambition. One may put forward the argument, why the demigods worshipped? The answer is given here that the demigods are worshipped by less intelligent men. The demigods themselves accept sacrifices for the ultimate satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnanantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtabitam Yena Bhutale Sayamrupa Karamayam Dadati Svapandantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutupada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rapam Shagajatam Sahagana Ragunathavitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Sadvutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishankanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Garangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranami Hari Priye Namo Maha Vidanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurasvise Namaha Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaya Evacha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Karara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. It's a privilege to be here with you all. I want to acknowledge that my health presently is not so well, and I hope it doesn't compromise what I want to offer today. But my apologies if it does so. And as I find that illness sometimes allows me to remember a couple of spiritual truths. The first of which, of course, is that we are not in control, and that our desire for health does not determine our health always, and that ill health will strike us oftentimes when we least expect it. And it can also, in my experience, become a catalyst for deepening our surrender. Because when your own capacities taken away from you to one or another degree, and you realize that you can't rely on yourself so much, but that you're dependent on the mercy of something other than yourself to continue to serve and to give. And so in that way, sometimes illness or hardship can move us closer to that place of surrender. It's been a little reflection in these past days. So this verse we're glorifying today falls within a chapter of Dhruva Maharaj's pastimes, where Swayambhuva Manu Maharaj is instructing his grandson during a period where Dhruva has become temporarily overwhelmed by lamentation, by anger, and also by a desire for retribution. And these instructions that are given to him achieve the desired result, in that Dhruva's emotions are subdued and his spiritual understanding is restored. And recognizing that these instructions achieved the desired results, I was reflecting what lessons can be drawn from this verse in this chapter in regards to when we ourselves are in the position of offering guidance to others, and how could we do so in a way that is similarly effective and beneficial. And so the first thing to look at, I think, is intention. And it is stated in text 6 of this chapter that it is out of kripa, mercy, and also karuna, compassion, that Swayambhuva Manu initially approaches Dhruva Maharaj. And so we must reflect within ourselves whether our intention for providing guidance is coming from a similarly pure intention of mercy or compassion, or whether it is emerging from some egoic desire to assert some form of authority over someone else, or to pass judgment onto someone else. But because Dhruva could perceive the purity of his grandfather's intention, was more receptive to the instruction that was given. And so before we offer guidance to someone in any circumstance, I think it's important to first reflect upon our intention for doing so, and ensure that it is coming from a place of compassion, rather than the desire to assert some form of authority or pass judgment. And furthermore, throughout this chapter, we see that although instruction is being given, and gentle criticism is being directed towards Dhruva's actions, Swayambhuva Manu Maharaj is always glorifying Dhruva Maharaj's positive qualities. We see this also in the Bhagavad Gita, of course, where at the same time that Krishna is instructing Arjuna, he is also glorifying him at the same time and glorifying all of his positive qualities. I thought that even in Krishna Lila, where Nanda is in the position of chastising little Krishna for stealing the butter, for eating the dirt, or the mischief that little Krishna was getting up to, there was a need for Nanda to chastise Krishna, but he always did so compassionately, and always did so while expressing love for Krishna. So again, the principle here is to, when we are in the position of instructing someone or providing guidance to someone, to simultaneously acknowledge and praise the positive qualities that they have, and to also do so compassionately. rather than harshly pointing out their flaws or judging them in that way, judging their faults. A distinction also that I think is important is between compassionately providing guidance and passing judgment. Swayambhuva Manu is appropriately providing his grandson with compassionate guidance and very sound instruction. And we must remember that at no point is our duty that of judgment. This is illustrated in a very beautiful pastime of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, which illustrates this principle nicely, where a brahmachari in Maharaja's temple fell down in a fairly serious way, and Maharaj was in the position of having to heavily chastise him and actually reject him from the ashram. And as this brahmachari was walking away from the ashram, from the temple, Bhaktisiddhanta looked at his other disciples and said, what are you doing? Please go and support him, take care of him. And they said, but Maharaj, we've just seen you chastise this man so heavily and reject him from the temple. Why is it that you want us to go and support him now when we've just seen you do this? To which Bhaktisiddhanta responded that as a spiritual master, it is my role and my duty to pass this sort of judgment, to make these decisions, and I do so with a heavy heart, but that is the burden and that is the responsibility that comes with my role as a spiritual master. But he said to his disciples that your role always is not one of judgment, but it is one simply of compassion. And he cited from Shastra, from Gaura Lila, where he referenced Kala Krishnadas, who also fell down and was rejected by Lord Chaitanya, who was perfectly embodying the dharma of a spiritual master, whereas Nityananda Prabhu, compassionately engaged Kala Krishnadas in service, and Nityananda Prabhu there was perfectly embodying the role of a devotee and of a Vaishnav. And so that this pastime is simply to illustrate that it is the spiritual master only who is in a position to pass judgment, whereas for aspiring Vaishnavs and Vaishnavs, our role simply is of unconditional and that unbearable compassion, and that is our dharma, that is our duty, not one of judgment. And so remembering this when we are in a position of guiding someone, that judgment is never the mood that we should embody in those moments, but compassion, in fact, is the appropriate mood. Now those were sort of some broader contextual themes of the chapter, but we'll return to the verse itself, and perhaps I'll just read out the translation one more time. My dear boy Dhruva, please surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate goal of the progress of the world. Everyone, including the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, is working under his control, just as a bull, prompted by a rope in its nose, is controlled by its owner. Now we've spoken already on some parallels between Krishna's instruction of Arjuna in the Gita and Manu Maharaja's instruction of Dhruva in this fourth canto, in this chapter. And although they are similar, it was pointed out to me yesterday that Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight, and his instruction is geared towards that outcome. whereas Manu Maharaj's intention is to stop Dhruva fighting these yakshas. And so interestingly, even though the instruction given is similar, the desired outcome is actually inverse of these two circumstances. But this verse that we're glorifying today is similar and quite reminiscent of a well-known verse in the Gita, 1866. Savathamana parityaja mamekam saranam vraja aham tva svava papebhyo moksha yashami masujaha. Please say it with me if you know. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. And so we see that the essence of that verse and the essence of the verse we are looking at today is very similar, and this reminder that the purpose of our life is surrendering to our sweet Lord and rendering loving service unto Him. And that's to put His will and His desires before our own, and to have faith in the path that He has laid for us. His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj has said that our connection with God can be made through faith, dedication, and our willingness to surrender. So surrender is so integral to this path of bhakti, and it's on one level simple, but on one level, very difficult to put into practice when our desire for control often is so strong. Now at the beginning of this purport, it is stated that the material disease is to declare independence from the Supreme Controller, and that factually our material existence begins when we forget the Supreme Controller and wish to lord it over material nature. And so we understand that the existence of this material world is the fulfillment of our desire to enjoy independent of Krishna. But we understand also that the living entity is by nature pleasure-seeking, anandamaya, and that we suffer in this world because we are falsely seeking pleasure on the material platform, and as a result we are becoming entangled in all of the painful complexities of material existence. Excuse me. Now another name for the Supreme Lord that we chant each day is Rama, Ram, which is the reservoir, meaning the reservoir of spiritual pleasure and happiness. So, but how, if we are pleasure-seeking by nature, how can we fulfill our pleasure-seeking desire when we have chosen to turn away from the reservoir of all spiritual pleasure? And how can we satisfy this desire by grasping onto the very fleeting pleasure of this material world? And so when we recognize that the pleasure of the very temporary and unsatisfactory pleasure of this material world is not going to satisfy our pleasure-seeking, our inherent pleasure-seeking nature, we recognize that we must turn back to and plug back into this reservoir of pleasure, Rama, and in doing so we can perfectly fulfill our inherent pleasure-seeking desire and tendency as living entities. But that desire is never going to be fulfilled as long as we are seeking that pleasure from this material world. Now elsewhere in Srila Prabhupada's purport of this verse, we hear him say that devotees who render continuous service to the Lord have already attained immortality. For whatever they are doing in this life, they will continue to do in the next. And that is to say that spiritual progress is not lost, is never lost, whereas the material progress that we make in this life is temporary, impermanent, and also unsatisfactory. And again, this verse is reminiscent of chapter 2 verse 40 in the Bhagavad Gita. Neha pikramana shoti pratyavayo na vidyate svalpamapi ashindamasya trayati mahato bayat. That in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on the path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. And so this is how we understand the important statement in this purport that Krishna is death for the demons and immortality for the devotees. Because all of the time, the energy and the love that we place into our spiritual lives and place into our relationship with Krishna is not affected by the passing of this body. And at the time of death we are simply given a body that better facilitates the service that we desire. Conversely, however, the material achievement that we accumulate begins at birth and concludes at death. And for those, therefore, who have invested their time and their energy into material accumulation, death is an understandable source of anxiety, because it is symbolic of the destruction of everything that they have created. But for those who have placed their energy into their spiritual growth, into their loving relationship with Krishna, death is not a source of anxiety, but rather just the next beautiful step in their devotional lives. I read a very beautiful verse in Rupa Goswami's Sri Padmavali that one who daily sings the glories of Yashoda's son Krishna, which are cooling as sandalwood and camphor, is not troubled by the days of Kali Yuga. For him at every step there is a torrential flood of the sweetest nectar. And so this is to say that the more that we invest in our spiritual lives, the less concerned we will be of the relentless flow of time and also the inevitability of our own deaths. These things will cease to trouble us, cease to concern us, cease to be a source of anxiety the more that we invest spiritually. Because when we invest spiritually, we're investing in something that is not dependent on time and is not affected by death. There was mentioned here also in the purport of demigod worship, and it was said that demigods are worshipped by less intelligent men, and the demigods themselves accept sacrifices for the ultimate satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And a way that helps me to understand this in an analogy that's used elsewhere in Shastra is that of the plant and the watering of the plant, and that in order to optimally nourish and sustain a plant, one must direct the water towards the roots, and that directing the water towards the branches or the leaves or the flowers is not going to have the desired result, because the leaves, branches and flowers themselves are serving the roots and allowing The root is at the heart of the plant, and that is what is allowing the plant to continue to grow. And that is what is giving energy to all these other parts of the plant. And so when we realize this, we realize that our own worship is best directed at the root. And the root is, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is where our worship and our love should be directed. And because the Supreme Lord is the sustainer of all of these other demigods, and so our worship and our love is always best directed at the root of the plant, which is the Supreme Lord, because in turn that will nourish the rest of the plant. And so similarly, the demigods themselves are worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just to say that our worship should be directed towards Krishna rather than towards the demigods. That was what I found from that. And the final point that I had was in regard to perceiving this whole chapter and this whole segment of Dhruva Maharaja's pastimes as being something of a purificatory process for him, and quite a painful one, but one that is guiding him towards deeper spiritual realizations, and also the reaffirmation of the knowledge that he already knew. And Dhruva has lost his brother Uttama, who was faultless and pure, was slain by a yaksha, and this was very painful to Dhruva, and it caused him to act in this way and to retaliate in this way. But this whole circumstance led to his darshan of his grandfather, which in turn provided Dhruva with the guidance and the instruction that he needed to deepen his spiritual understanding. And so the principle to draw from here is one that's comes up in many places, in both in Shastra but also I think within our own lives, that hardship, although very painful in the moment, often brings forth new realizations and spiritual growth. And now, with this principle, it's very important not to bypass any emotions that accompany these challenges and these hardships, and we must acknowledge and deal with these emotions, process these emotions appropriately and healthily. But at the same time, if we can have the framework that the hardship that we are enduring is likely going to be ultimately fruitful for our spiritual lives, it can be a framework we can really take refuge in, because rather than seeing hardship as something to be afraid of or something that will bring us down, we can see it as something that will ultimately lift us up and bring us closer to Krishna. And we can really just take refuge in that, acknowledging that these experiences offer opportunities for greater love and deeper understanding. And through embracing these trials, we can continue to evolve, emotionally and spiritually also. So I that's something that I often reflect on and try to keep in my mind, that the hardships that I'm enduring have been given to me in order for me to learn and to love also, and that is the necessary path towards knowledge, and also towards just a deepening and a softening of our hearts. that was the final reflection I had. It's a little early, but does anyone have any corrections or questions or? Thank you, Prabhu. It's a wonderful question and one which I need to ask myself also, because it's said in this purport and in this verse that this material condition that we are, presently entrapped in is a result of our desire to lord it over nature and to control. And so while we are still trying to control, we are entrapped in this world, and we are further from God, from our Lord. I think circumstances that you recognize as being out of your control, that come upon you, can help us to recognize the incredibly finite limit of our control over our lives. And in fact, the closer attention that you pay to your experience, you realize that you're actually not in control of anything, and that the thoughts that arise in our minds, we are not authoring, we are not creating. These thoughts just simply appear in our minds, and desires just simply appear in our hearts. And we are not actually the author or the proprietor of those thoughts. And so some version of mindfulness, or just the close inspection of our experience, can lead us to understand that we are not actually in control of that which we may have previously thought ourselves to be in control of. And recognizing the absence of control we have over our lives, I think can lead us closer to the direction of surrender, perhaps. So just some version of closely inspecting the nature of our minds, the nature of our experience, in such a way that reveals to us that what is taking place in our experience is not actually in our control. Thank you, Prabhu. I'm not sure if I can give an appropriate answer to this question. I'm sure that someone in this room could also, but my understanding is that Krishna delegates certain responsibilities to different demigods, and is in that way the controller of them. Or if you think of a hierarchical structure where Krishna as the CEO of sorts, who then delegates different roles and responsibilities to different demigods, but although they undertake these responsibilities independently, they are still under the control of Krishna. I'm not sure if that's right, but that's sort of my understanding. Thank you. Beautiful. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananda Koti Vaishnavrinda ki.